The sound of metal crushing metal still lives somewhere inside my body. Even now, years later, if I close my eyes too tightly, I can hear it again. The screech of brakes, the violent impact, the sudden silence that followed. Silence so heavy it felt louder than the crash itself. That was the day everything I believed about love, family, and safety shattered. I was 7 months pregnant. I remember thinking about groceries, about paint colors for the nursery, about how my husband had promised he'd be home early that night. I never made it home. The accident wasn't dramatic from the outside. No explosions. No flames. Just a careless driver running a red light and my world folding in on itself. I woke up in the hospital with tubes in my arms and a pain so deep I couldn't scream. The first thing I did was reach for my stomach. A nurse grabbed my hand gently. "Your baby is alive," she said. I sobbed. Not out of relief. Out of terror. Because I knew somehow that surviving wasn't the same as being safe. My husband arrived 3 hours later. 3 hours. He stood at the foot of my bed like a stranger waiting for bad news at someone else's funeral. "They say you'll recover," he said. "Eventually." No kiss. No tears. No questions about the baby. I tried to tell myself he was in shock. But shock doesn't explain coldness. My parents came the next day. They didn't sit down. My mother crossed her arms. My father stared at the floor. "This is bad timing," my mother said. I blinked. "Bad timing for what?" "For everything," she replied. "You can't even take care of yourself now. A baby? In this condition?" I looked at them confused. "I didn't choose the accident," I said. My father finally spoke. "Life happens. But we warned you. Marriage, pregnancy, it was all rushed." That was the moment I realized something terrifying. They weren't worried about me. They were embarrassed by me. 3 days later, my husband stopped coming. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I heard the truth from a nurse who felt sorry for me. "He asked about discharge papers," she said carefully. "And financial responsibility." I stared at the wall. My body was broken. My future was bleeding out. And the people who were supposed to hold me together were already gone. I was discharged a week later with a walker, pain medication, and instructions I barely understood. My husband didn't pick me up. My parents didn't answer their phones. A hospital volunteer drove me to my apartment. When I unlocked the door, the silence hit me harder than the accident ever did. Half the closet was empty. His things were gone. So was the money. The note was short. "I'm not ready for this life." No signature. No explanation. Just abandonment folded into a piece of paper. I tried calling my parents again. This time my mother answered. "We can't help you," she said before I could even speak. "You need to be responsible for your choices." "I'm pregnant," I whispered. "I can't work. I can barely walk." There was a pause. Then, "We raised you. We're done." The line went dead. That night I slept in my car. I couldn't afford the apartment without his income. The landlord changed the locks 2 days later. I learned very quickly what it feels like to be invisible. People walked past me as I sat in the driver's seat, my swollen belly pressing against the steering wheel, my hands shaking from pain and fear. I whispered to my unborn child through tears, "I'm sorry. I didn't know love could disappear this fast." The days blurred together. Pain. Hunger. Cold. I parked near a grocery store so I could use the bathroom. Sometimes strangers gave me change. Sometimes they didn't even look at me. One afternoon, the pain became unbearable. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. I thought I was going to lose my baby. That was the moment I realized something worse than fear. I was completely alone. And that's when a knock came on my window. I flinched, heart racing. A man stood outside my car. Calm. Well-dressed. Concerned. "Ma'am," he said gently, "you've been sitting here for hours. Are you okay?" I stared at him, my hand instinctively covering my belly. No one had asked me that question in weeks. And I didn't know how to answer. Because nothing was okay anymore. I didn't answer him right away. I couldn't. My chest tightened, my throat burned, and before I could stop myself, tears started streaming down my face. Not quiet tears. The kind that shake your entire body, the kind you cry when you've been strong for too long. The man outside my car stepped back immediately. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to scare you. I just noticed you've been here for a while. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my jacket and shook my head. No, it's not you, I whispered. I'm just not okay. He nodded slowly like he understood exactly what that meant. My name is Michael, he said. Do you need help? That word hit me harder than the accident ever had. Help. I had asked for it before. From my husband. From my parents. I knew how that story ended. I'm fine, I lied. Michael's eyes moved to my swollen belly, then back to my face. You don't look fine, he said gently. And you shouldn't be sleeping in a car. Not like this. I looked away. I don't have anywhere else to go, I admitted. He exhaled slowly, careful not to scare me away. "'Kay," he said. "Then let's do one thing at a time. You need food." My stomach betrayed me with a loud growl. He smiled softly. "I'll take that as a yes." He bought me a hot meal and water. He didn't stare while I ate like I was starving, even though I was. He didn't rush me. He didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. We sat on a bench near the parking lot. "What happened?" he asked eventually. I told myself I'd keep it short. But once I started talking, everything spilled out. The accident. The hospital. My husband leaving. My parents refusing to help. Sleeping in my car. He listened without interrupting. Without reacting. When I finished, I waited for advice. Or pity. Or judgment. Instead, he said, "You didn't deserve any of that." Something inside me broke. "I don't know what to do," I said quietly. "I can't work properly. I'm injured. I'm pregnant. I'm scared all the time." Michael was silent for a moment. "I have a small guest house," he said carefully. "You could stay there for a few days. No cost. No conditions. Just rest." Every warning voice in my head screamed at once. Stranger. Man. Too good to be true. "I can't," I said immediately. "I don't even know you." "That's fair," he replied. "You don't have to decide now." He handed me a business card. Just his name. Just a phone number. "I'll be at the diner across the street for the next hour," he said. "If you change your mind, you know where to find me." Then he walked away. I sat in my car for a long time. I stared at the card. Then at my belly. "I have to protect you," I whispered. An hour later, I walked into that diner. The guest house was small but clean. Warm. Safe. That night, when I lay down on a real bed for the first time in weeks, I cried again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from relief. Michael didn't hover. He didn't ask personal questions. He didn't cross boundaries. He drove me to doctor appointments, helped me get medication, fixed my car. Only later did I realize something important. Michael wasn't just kind. He was wealthy. Very wealthy. But he never acted like it mattered. One evening, as we sat outside watching the sunset, he asked softly, "Why did your husband really leave?" I swallowed. "He said he wasn't ready," I replied. "But I think he just didn't want a broken life." Michael nodded. "Some people only love you when life is easy," he said. That sentence stayed with me. Because for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. And that scared me more than being alone. I used to think that losing everything would happen all at once. One moment. One final blow. But I learned the truth slowly. Losing everything happens in layers. First your safety. Then your dignity. Then your sense of self. By the time I entered my 8th month of pregnancy, my body felt like it no longer belonged to me. My legs were constantly swollen. My back ached every night. The pain from the accident still flared up without warning, especially when I was tired or stressed. Michael's guest house had given me rest, but it wasn't a permanent solution. And I knew it. I needed to stand on my own feet again, even if they were shaking. With Michael's help, I found a small room to rent above a laundromat on the edge of the city. It wasn't pretty. The walls were thin, the air always smelled like detergent, and the machines below rumbled day and night. But it was mine. I worked wherever I could. A diner 3 mornings a week. A grocery store on weekends. Sometimes cleaning houses for cash. I learned how to smile through pain. How to hide nausea. How to cry silently in bathroom stalls. Every night I spoke to my baby. I don't know how yet, I whispered, one hand on my belly, But I promise you, you will never feel unwanted. Those words mattered, because I knew exactly what abandonment felt like. My parents never called. Not once. First, I checked my phone constantly. Then less often. Then not at all. Hope, I learned, becomes dangerous when you're the only one holding on to it. My husband, soon to be my ex, filed for divorce through a lawyer. No apology. No explanation. Just paperwork. The day I signed the documents, my hand shook so badly the pen scratched across the page. I wasn't crying for him anymore. I was mourning the life I thought I was building. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, I decided to walk home instead of taking the bus. My feet hurt, but my thoughts were louder. It was raining lightly. The kind of rain that feels sad instead of angry. I stopped under the awning of a closed bookstore, rubbing my arms to keep warm. That's when a black car pulled up nearby. I barely noticed it until it stopped. A man stepped out holding an umbrella. Tall. Calm. Early 40s. Dressed simply. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice wasn't curious. It wasn't pitying. It was steady. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. A lie women learn early. His eyes moved briefly to my belly, then back to my face. "You're soaked," he said. "There's a CAF across the street. May I buy you some tea?" No expectations. Every instinct told me to refuse. But something about him felt familiar. Not his face. His tiredness. "One tea," I said. "That's all." The CAF was warm and smelled like cinnamon. We sat across from each other, steam rising from our cups. "My name is Daniel," he said. I told him mine. He didn't ask about my pregnancy right away. He asked what I did for work. What books I liked. Whether ID always lived in the city. For the first time in months, I felt human. Not a burden. Not a problem. Just a person. Eventually, the truth came out. The accident. The abandonment. The room above the laundromat. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said only one thing. "That shouldn't have happened to you." No advice. No lectures. Just acknowledgement. Before we left, he handed me a card. "If you ever need real help," he said, "call me. If you don't, that's okay too." I went home confused. And lighter than I had felt in months. I didn't call him. Not at first. Winter arrived early that year. My hours at work were cut. Bills piled up. One morning, halfway up the stairs to my room, my vision went black. I sat down hard, gasping for air. That was the day I called the number on the card. He answered on the second ring. "You don't need to explain," he said when he heard my voice shaking. "Where are you?" Within an hour, he was there. He didn't take me to a shelter. He took me to a doctor. Then, quietly, without drama, he helped me move into a small furnished apartment near the hospital. "Safe. Warm. Stable. I'll cover the rent for 3 months," he said. "After that, we'll figure it out together." "Why?" I asked. "You barely know me." He looked at me carefully. "Because once," he said, "someone helped me when I had nothing. And it saved my life." Our connection didn't become romantic overnight. That's not how real life works. He checked on me. Drove me to appointments. Sometimes we had dinner. Sometimes we just sat in silence. He never touched me without permission. Never treated me like charity. When I went into labor at 3 in the morning, he drove me to the hospital with shaking hands. When my daughter was born, healthy, screaming, alive, he stood quietly in the corner, tears running down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time since the accident, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. I wasn't alone anymore. Holding my baby in my arms for the first time didn't just fill me with love. It reopened every wound I thought had closed. Because now everything mattered more. Every choice. Every mistake. Every person I allowed near us. Daniel stayed present but never intrusive. He helped me settle into a rhythm. Morning feedings. Short walks with the stroller. Quiet afternoons when my daughter slept on my chest, her tiny breath syncing with my heartbeat. Those moments were fragile. Sacred. And I was terrified of losing them. I still worked when I could. Mostly remote tasks Daniel helped me find. Nothing glamorous but enough to start rebuilding something that felt like independence. One afternoon while sorting mail I froze. An envelope. My mother's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in almost a year. For a long time I just stared at it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. We heard you had the baby. Your father and I think it's time to talk. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. My chest tightened. They had ignored me when I was injured. Ignored me when I was pregnant. Ignored me when I was homeless. But now they wanted access. To my child. That night I didn't sleep. I kept imagining them holding my daughter. Smiling the way they smiled in public. Pretending nothing had happened. Daniel noticed immediately. You don't have to face them, he said calmly. I know, I replied. But I need to decide who I am now. A week later my parents showed up unannounced. They stood outside the apartment building like strangers. My mother looked older. My father avoided my eyes. We were worried, my mother said, as if concern had simply been delayed. I didn't invite them in. You weren't worried when I was sleeping in my car, I said. Silence. My father cleared his throat. That was complicated. I laughed. A short broken sound. No, I said. It was simple. You chose comfort over your daughter. My mother's eyes moved past me toward the crib inside. Can we see the baby? That was the moment everything crystallized. No, I said firmly. You don't get access without accountability. They left angry. And for the first time I didn't feel guilty. A month later my ex-husband resurfaced. Through a lawyer. He was suddenly interested in custody. The timing wasn't accidental. He had heard about Daniel. About the apartment. The stability. The money. He wanted control, not connection. The legal battle drained me. Court dates. Paperwork. Reliving the accident again and again. Daniel hired the best lawyer I'd ever met. A woman who didn't flinch. When my ex claimed I was unstable, she slid medical records across the table. When he questioned my finances, she presented documented support and employment. When he tried to paint himself as a victim, she calmly asked, "Where were you when she was recovering from the accident? When she was pregnant? When she was homeless?" He had no answers. The judge saw the truth. Full custody. Supervised visitation only, if he ever earned it. I walked out of that courtroom shaking, but lighter. That night Daniel cooked dinner. Nothing fancy. Soup. Bread. Quiet music. After my daughter fell asleep, I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. Why are you still here? He looked at me for a long moment. Because you don't need saving, he said. You need support. And I choose to give it. I felt something break open in my chest. Love didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like safety. Like consistency. Like someone staying. Months passed. My daughter learned to smile. Then laugh. I learned to trust again slowly. One evening as we sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Daniel reached into his pocket. It wasn't a ring. It was a key. My house, he said. Whenever you're ready. I didn't answer right away. I looked at my sleeping child. At the man beside me. At the life I never planned but somehow survived into. I'm not ready yet, I said honestly. He smiled. Oh wait. And in that moment I knew something important. Real love doesn't rush you. It waits until you feel safe enough to walk toward it on your own. I used to believe that happy endings were loud. Big gestures. Public apologies. People realizing their mistakes too late. But real endings, the ones that heal, are quiet. They arrive when you finally stop waiting for the past to change. The first year after my daughter was born passed faster than I expected. There were sleepless nights. Moments of panic. Days when I felt like I was failing at everything. But there was also laughter. Her laughter. The kind that fills a room and makes you forget every dark place you've ever been. I moved into Daniel's house slowly. Not all at once. First just weekends. Then a few nights a week. Then, eventually, without realizing it, it became home. He never pressured me. He never tried to replace anyone. He showed up every single day. My parents tried again. This time with gifts. Clothes. Toys. Letters that sounded rehearsed. I forgive you, my mother wrote, as if forgiveness was hers to offer. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Some doors close not to punish others but to protect yourself. My daughter would grow up knowing love without conditions. That was non-negotiable. One afternoon while Daniel was at work, there was a knock at the door. It was my ex-husband. Older. Thinner. Nervous. He said he just wanted to see his daughter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said, "You don't get to step into a life you abandoned." He left quietly. And I felt nothing. No rage. No sadness. Just peace. That's when I knew I had healed. Daniel proposed on an ordinary evening. No crowd. No speeches. Just us in the kitchen while dinner cooked. "I don't want to rescue you," he said. "I want to walk beside you if you'll let me." I said yes. Not because I needed him, but because I wanted him. We married a year later. Small ceremony. Few people. A lot of meaning. My daughter took her first steps that same week. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Just keeps going. And sometimes it surprises you with joy right after pain. Today, when people hear my story, they say things like, "You're so strong. You survived so much. You're lucky." But that's not the truth. I wasn't strong all the time. I broke. I doubted. I was scared. What saved me wasn't strength. It was choice. The choice to keep going. The choice to accept help without shame. The choice to believe that abandonment doesn't define your worth. If you're listening to this story and you're in a dark place right now, hear this. Being rejected doesn't mean you are unlovable. Being left doesn't mean you are worthless. Being broken doesn't mean you are finished. Sometimes life falls apart so something better can be built. Slowly, painfully, honestly. I didn't lose everything. I lost what couldn't love me back. And I gained a life that finally could. The end.